My name is Emily Harper. One day, in our 24th year of marriage, my father-in-law, whom I had been caring for alone for years, passed away. My mother-in-law had died 10 years ago, and since then, I had been looking after him. When he died, it felt like a huge hole had opened up in my heart. At that moment, my husband said, "I'm moving to a mansion with my mistress and our child." A mansion. A mistress. A love child. I had suspected he had a mistress, but I pretended not to notice because I didn't want to worry my bedridden father-in-law. I knew that if my husband's affair became known, a divorce would likely follow, and I would have to leave the house. Without me, who would take care of my father-in-law? He would have felt anxious about that. So, I kept pretending not to know. Yet, as soon as my father-in-law passed, my husband handed me divorce papers, telling me to hurry up and submit them. Now that my father-in-law was gone, getting divorced didn't seem like a big deal. My husband handed me the papers with a mocking, "Here you go." "Yeah, thanks. ATM. You've been real helpful." When my mother-in-law passed, the only one left in the family home was my father-in-law, who needed care. My husband laughed and said, "My mom took care of my dad alone, so you can manage too, right?" I replied, "But if I do that, I won't be able to work part-time. We'll be tight on money." He retorted, "How much do you even make from your part-time job? We won't have to pay rent anymore, so it's fine." "It's not as easy as you think," I said. "What about the kids' tuition? It's really squeezing us." "The kids' tuition? Like for their tutoring? You shouldn't have sent them in the first place," he responded. "I can go to tutoring and still made it into high school." "That's true, but if you really want to work, why not do some remote work? Working from home still counts as a job. But if you're going to work, make sure you keep up with the housework and caregiving too," he added. "If it comes to that, you're going to have to help," I insisted. He shot back, "If you want me to help, then you shouldn't be working. I'm working to support you and the kids, so I'm not doing any caregiving." His words were selfish, especially since it was his own parent who needed care. He refused to come home, using the excuse of being busy. "Why aren't you coming home?" I asked. "I'm busy." "Do you want me to come home after the last train leaves?" "A cab would be expensive." "Are you going to cover the fare?" he replied. He was right, we couldn't afford that. In the end, I just kept quiet. I wondered what the point of marriage was, where that "in sickness and in health" promise had gone. During all this, my father-in-law was given a terminal diagnosis. I wanted him to spend his remaining days peacefully, but my husband had other concerns. "Hey, how much inheritance does Dad have?" he'd asked. "Huh? He hasn't even passed away yet, so why are you talking about inheritance?" I was shocked. "If we wait until he dies, we won't know." "We've got to find out now," he insisted. I tried to brush him off, but my husband went directly to his father and asked, "Hey Dad, how much inheritance do you have?" I couldn't believe it. "It's not right to ask your dad that." I tried to stop him, but he wouldn't listen. "Well, since you don't know, I have to ask Dad. Even so, hey Dad, if you don't give us the details, it'll be tough for those left behind. You've been running businesses since you were young, right? You must have quite a fortune." I had heard something like this before. My husband had been spoiled, relying on his parents for money when he ran out. I didn't know this when I married him, but once we had a family, it just didn't work. So, after we got married, he started working, but the jobs weren't stable, and he would quit quickly, leaving me worried. Even when his dad fell ill, my husband wasn't around, and he wasn't there when his mother died either. He'd always say, whether I was there or not, the outcome would have been the same. He'd laugh as he said that, but with that attitude, I knew he wasn't going to inherit anything. However, being an only child, if there was an inheritance, it would all go to him. One day, he asked, "Hey Dad, how much is it?" My father-in-law replied, $20 million. My husband couldn't believe it. Seriously, that's amazing. Having a dad like you is great. After that, he left the house and never came back. He only stayed in touch to check if his dad was still alive. It wasn't concern, it was more like, he's still alive, huh? Whenever I said his dad was fine, he'd ask for more money because he was broke. I lost count of how many times I felt like an ATM. After the funeral, my husband casually remarked, he finally went, before disappearing. Then, a lawyer came to the house to discuss the inheritance. My husband showed up immediately, saying, it's finally happening. When it came time to talk, he didn't listen to a word the lawyer said. Don't worry about it. Just give me the inheritance already. The lawyer tried to warn him about potential issues, but my husband brushed him off. He signed the papers cheerfully and then looked at me with a grin. Too bad, huh? Not a single penny for you. Dad was pretty harsh, but inheritance is only for real kids, so just give up. I felt a wave of relief, knowing this marked the end of our relationship. My husband then demanded the money. The lawyer explained that he couldn't access it until the inheritance process was complete. That's a hassle. How long will it take? My husband grumbled. The lawyer couldn't provide an exact timeline, which frustrated him even more. He even accused the lawyer of planning to run away with the money. The lawyer assured him that he valued his career more than the money. My husband eventually left, and the lawyer and I exchanged looks. His expression seemed to say, you married a difficult person, while mine apologized for my husband's behavior. For a while after that, my husband stayed away. I took the opportunity to sell my father-in-law's house and find a new place. On moving day, he showed up. Hey, what are you doing? He asked, catching me off guard. Moving, I replied. Why are you moving? This house is empty now, and you're not coming back, right? It's also weird for me to stay here after the divorce, so I'm moving. He seemed suspicious. Or were you planning to take the money and run? I sighed. I can't withdraw any money yet, so what would I take? I'm not turning into a criminal. I just want a peaceful life. Just because you're obsessed with money doesn't mean everyone else is too. He scoffed. You never know what'll happen when money's involved. I shrugged. Think whatever you want. He then asked about the house. I sold it, I said. He looked shocked. You sold it without telling me. Isn't this part of the inheritance? Exactly, which is why I sold it, I explained. He immediately accused me of stealing. No, I didn't steal anything, and I have no intention of doing so. The money from the sale is part of the inheritance, so I handed it over to the lawyer. Why'd you give it to the lawyer? Sure, we can't withdraw the savings yet, but you shouldn't be handing over cash, my husband said. The lawyer told me it was necessary. If you're going to keep complaining, why don't you handle it all yourself? I shot back. I hadn't gotten a penny, but I was busy selling the house and sorting through his father's belongings. You should be doing this, you know, I added. I can't help it. I don't like that kind of stuff, he mumbled. Nobody does. Stop making excuses. So, you really gave the money to the lawyer? I told you I did, so it's not here, and it's not my concern, I replied. Fine, call the lawyer then, he demanded. Why should I be the one to call him? You can do it yourself, I said. I don't have his number. Call him for me. He always found reasons to make me handle things, but this would be the last time. I sighed and called the lawyer's office. After a brief hold, I got him on the line. Go ahead. Tell them to come over, my husband ordered. Tell him yourself. I'm not your servant, I retorted. Daniel looked annoyed but took the phone and started talking. See, he could do it himself. I was fed up with being made to handle everything. Hey, what did you do with the money from selling the house? Daniel asked the lawyer. I'm holding on to it, the lawyer replied. Bring the money and come here. The lawyer explained that the paperwork wasn't done yet, but Daniel insisted, just bring the money. With that, he hung up. What a rude way to ask for help. I realized how tough it must be to work as a lawyer. A while later, a luxury car pulled into the driveway, and the lawyer stepped out. I sincerely thanked him for coming on such short notice. He responded with a reserved, "It's all right," though it was clear he was frustrated. Meanwhile, Daniel sat sullenly in the empty room, acting arrogantly. When the lawyer arrived, Daniel didn't bother to say hello or thank you. Truly a hopeless man. "Hey, you! What did you do with the money from selling the house?" Daniel asked. "Oh, that? I could have explained that over the phone." The lawyer replied. "What? I'm a client. I paid for your legal fees." "No, I haven't received any fees yet. I'll send an invoice once everything is done," the lawyer corrected him. "Well, no problem. I've got $20 million. Your fees are nothing. So, what happened with the house money, and where's my $20 million? "The proceeds from selling the house are $160,000, the lawyer said. "That's awfully low, isn't it?" Daniel asked. "The house is quite old, so it was difficult to find a buyer. But that's understandable," the lawyer explained. "Got it. I suppose it makes sense. But as I explained to your wife, that money has been temporarily deposited into a bank account. You'll be able to withdraw it in a few days. So please wait until then. Where's the bank card? Even if I can't withdraw yet, I should have it, right? I'll withdraw it myself when the time comes," Daniel demanded. "I've given it to your wife," the lawyer said. "If you've got it, hand it over quickly." Yeah. Just hold on a second. Were you not planning to give it to me unless I asked?" Daniel accused. "Enough is enough. I never thought of doing that. If you want it that badly, here you go." I pulled out the bank card and related documents from my bag and placed them in front of Daniel. If keeping it meant listening to him complain, I didn't want to hold on to it. But he didn't care about my feelings. He grabbed the bank card and looked at the bank statements with a smug grin. It showed a balance of $20 million. "Oh wow, look at all those zeros. I've never seen this many before." He couldn't contain his excitement, grinning uncontrollably. "All right, now I can cover the costs of building my mansion." "You're building a mansion?" I asked. "Yeah, a $6 million mansion. I'm a multimillionaire, after all. I can't be living anywhere less impressive, right?" he boasted. "I see. Sounds like a lot to handle," I said. "Not at all. It's no trouble, I'm sure. I'm looking forward to it myself," he replied. "Huh? What are you excited about?" "Oh, it's just something personal," I said. "Right. Well, having something to look forward to is a good thing." "Absolutely. So, when can I actually withdraw this?" he asked. "In about a week," the lawyer answered. "What? It's going to take that long? Aren't you working too slow?" Daniel complained. "There are many procedures to follow," the lawyer explained. "Is that typical?" "No. It's just that your inheritance amount is so large, Mr. Taylor," the lawyer said. "I see. If that's the case, it's understandable." "1 week, then." "Yes, that's right. And Mrs. Taylor, I believe you have the will that was entrusted to you by the deceased?" the lawyer asked. "Yes, my father-in-law handed it to me just before he passed away. He told me to give it after the inheritance procedures were completed," I replied. "A will? What's that all about?" Daniel asked, puzzled. "Not sure. I assumed it's like a final farewell, but it's sealed, so I haven't looked inside," I explained. "Since most of the procedures are nearly done, it's safe to hand over now," the lawyer said. "Understood. Here it is, the final letter from your dad," I said. "Humph, I doubt there's much in it, but I'll read it when I feel like it," Daniel replied. Then he left without even looking at the will, muttering to himself, "A week from now." However, a week later, something unexpected happened. Daniel called me from the bank, where he was trying to pay the $6 million for the mansion's construction. "Hey, there's no money in the account." "What happened?" "What do you mean, what happened? How would I know?" I replied. "I got the bank card from you, So you must have withdrawn it first. How could I have done that? I gave you the card and the pin together. Plus, I had no idea today was the withdrawal date. I pointed out. Then why is it gone? There should have been $20 million, but now it's empty, he insisted. I'm telling you, I don't know who did it, I said. Who stole my $20 million? Did you read the will from your dad? I asked. What? You didn't read it, did you? Maybe there's something written in there, I suggested. Oh, maybe you're right. I'll go home and check, he said before hanging up. It was frustrating how he just said whatever he wanted and then hung up. He completely lacked basic manners. I put my phone down, and a little while later, it rang again. It was Daniel. Come on, give me a break, I muttered as I answered the call. Hey, could you stop this? I'm not your wife or anything anymore. I was finally relaxing, but you just had to ruin it. It's worse than that. Daniel's voice was full of anguish. It really sounded like something serious. What's going on? What's this about debt? I asked, confused. Not you, my dad, he clarified. What? I read the letter, and Dad borrowed a ridiculous amount, he said. What the hell is going on? Isn't it all written in the letter? I asked, trying to stay calm since this really has nothing to do with me. What do you mean? We're divorced, right? Your dad's debt isn't my problem, I replied. Did you know about it? Is that why you signed off on the divorce so quickly when I suggested it? He shot back. There you go again. How would I have known? If he wrote it in a letter, it means he didn't want anyone to know, right? Why would he tell me something like that? Yeah, that makes sense. So what is this all about then? He asked, still confused. I don't know, and I don't have any inheritance rights, so it's not my problem. Nor do I want to know, I said firmly. Call the lawyer, he insisted. I'm not your secretary, wife, or mother. Why should I call him just because you told me to? Enough. Okay, don't be mad. Please call him. I'll head to the family home right away, he pleaded. Family home. There's no house anymore, remember? I reminded him. Oh, where should I go then? He asked, clearly flustered. Why don't you go to the lawyer's office? I suggested. Good idea. Fine, I'll meet you at the office. What? Why do I have to go? I questioned. Please come with me, he begged. Despite being curious about what was happening, I reluctantly agreed to meet at the lawyer's office. When I arrived, Daniel was already there, looking visibly irritated. You're late. I'm leaving, he snapped. No, sorry. Stay with me, I urged. Daniel's uncertain demeanor, fluctuating between assertiveness and vulnerability, almost made me laugh. Just then, the lawyer appeared. Hello, how can I assist you today? You should be able to go to the bank now. That's it? That's the problem. Why isn't there any money in the account? Daniel demanded. No money in the account. Well, that's understandable, the lawyer responded. What do you mean? Just explain, Daniel insisted. The $20 million is gone. Well, inheriting $20 million means you'll have to pay $9.164 million in inheritance taxes, the lawyer explained. What? Why are inheritance taxes so high? Daniel asked, stunned. Because it's $20 million. It's just the law, the lawyer clarified. Are you serious? Did you pocket the money? Daniel accused. Mr. Taylor, if you keep this up, I could sue you for defamation. There was indeed $20 million before the paperwork was done, but once taxes were paid, this is what remained. We used the rest to pay off the deceased's debts. Why did you do that without telling me? Daniel fumed. That was his final wish. He wanted any remaining money to be used to pay off his debts after his passing. The lawyer explained. How much debt did he have? Daniel asked. The deceased had been extensively involved in business when he was younger and incurred significant debt. Despite efforts to repay it, the total debt exceeded $20 million, which was insurmountable. The lawyer continued. Out of the $20 million, $9.164 million went towards inheritance taxes, and the remainder was used to pay off the debt. That leaves a debt of $9.164 million, which you, Mr. Taylor, are now responsible for paying. There's no way I can afford that, Daniel explained. Regardless, since you've inherited it, it's your responsibility, the lawyer stated. Inherited. Then I'll just refuse the inheritance. Problem solved, right? Daniel suggested. It's too late for that. The paperwork is complete, the lawyer replied. Why didn't you tell me this before I signed? If you had, I wouldn't be in this mess, Daniel complained. I tried to explain before you signed, but you interrupted and signed anyway, Mr. Taylor, the lawyer responded calmly. So that's what it was. But what about the $6 million mansion I'm building? What do I do now? Daniel asked, panic in his voice. There's nothing more that can be done from our end. What I can tell you is that you have a legal obligation to pay the remaining $9.164 million. The lawyer answered. What should I do? Even if I sell the $6 million mansion, I'd still have $3.164 million left to pay, wouldn't I? Daniel realized. That's right. Plus, selling that mansion might not get you the full $6 million, the lawyer added. Ah, what should I do now? Damn, if you had explained everything properly in the beginning, this wouldn't have happened. You're a lawyer, and I'm just a layman. You should have explained it all. What am I supposed to tell my wife? Daniel lamented. That's really tough, I muttered. When I glanced at the lawyer, he was smiling. Ah, this must have been the fun he mentioned before. So, didn't you get something? Daniel suddenly asked. Huh? Mrs. Taylor has no inheritance rights, so she hasn't received anything, the lawyer interjected. Are you sure you got nothing? Daniel questioned. I didn't get anything. There were whole $0 million left, so how could I possibly have anything? I replied. And if you did get some, Daniel pressed. If I did, it would have been deducted from the $20 million, right? I stated firmly. Daniel was desperate to find someone to blame, accusing me and insisting I must have inherited something. He frantically searched for a scapegoat, but once he realized it was hopeless, he left the office.
I've been going through a rough time with my family. I turned 18 last week, and my dad thought it was the right time to kick me out. My mother passed away when I was 3 years old in an unfortunate accident. Since then, my dad has had a long list of girlfriends and failed relationships. Even as a kid, I'd never seen him without a woman in the house. I had a nanny to look after me during the day while my dad was at work, and whenever he would come back, his girlfriend at the time would be with him. He cut ties with my mother's family after her passing because he didn't see the point of keeping in touch with them. I assumed they didn't want a reminder of the tragedy, so they didn't claim custody to be able to visit me either. Growing up, it was just me and my dad, but he never seemed very interested in being a father to me. He mostly spent his time either working or hanging out with his girlfriend, whoever it happened to be at the time. I tried really hard to get along with him as a kid, but I never received any love and affection from him. He just did the bare minimum for me, so I gradually learned to expect nothing at all. That was my childhood, lonely and kind of sad. But thankfully, I still had my grandfather to keep me company. Unfortunately, he couldn't take me in because my father didn't want to give up custody. Sometimes he'd visit me, and at other times I'd go to him. But my father made sure very carefully that I didn't end up spending more than maybe 3 or 4 days at his place. My visits to my grandfather were regulated by my dad, and I still don't know why he was so finicky about it. I don't know why my father wasn't willing to give up custody, even though he treated me coldly. As I got older, I began to rebel because I wanted to spend more time at my grandfather's place. Obviously, it was because my grandfather showed me more love and affection and actually seemed to care about me beyond just the basics. But my father wasn't willing to let me, and even when I brought up how my grandfather treated me infinitely better than he did, My father would still say that at the end of the day he's my dad and whatever he says goes. My grandfather tried to get my dad to treat me like his own kid several times. But nothing ever changed, nor did he let me move out and live with my grandpa. So even in my teens, I had to continue living with my father. That was pretty much the worst phase of our relationship, and things only got worse after he met my current stepmother, Veronica. Veronica used to be our neighbor's niece who'd been living with our neighbor until her company was able to provide her with proper accommodation. But then she and my dad started going out, and they got married about a year ago after almost 8 months of dating. My dad seemed to dislike having me around, but never did anything about it until Veronica came around. And then the both of them turned pretty vicious towards me. Veronica had it in for me ever since the first day, and I had no idea why. It's not like I'd done anything to her, and in fact, I'd always tried to be very nice to her. But she hated my guts. I guess it had something to do with the fact that I was my dad's son from his previous marriage, and she couldn't stand the fact that I was still around because that was just a reminder that my dad had been married before or something. But that's just my theory of why she hated me so much. Maybe she just didn't need a reason to hate me, and that's the kind of person that she was. I don't know. The bottom line was that she hated me, period, and my life got a lot worse after she started dating my father. She'd make it a point to be as horrible to me as she possibly could whenever we were in the same room. She practically treated me like a housekeeper or something and would make me do all the chores, even though we had a maid, and my dad never said a word against it. I felt like Cinderella in my own house. Once she moved in, she not only made my dad stop giving me money for going out with my friends, but she also convinced him that I was old enough to get a part-time job and make my own money. So I had to get a job after that, which was a much easier alternative than begging my dad to treat me like a human being. It was horrible because Veronica seemed bent on making my life a nightmare at my father's house, and I couldn't wait for the day that I could finally go away to college and move out of this place. I did tell my grandfather about the way I was being treated after Veronica moved in, and he told me that he'd talk to my father about it and do something. But things never changed, and after a while, I just gave up hope that maybe my grandfather would be able to make things better for me. I would vent to him, and he'd listen to me patiently, but that's all that happened, and things never changed. After a while, I just accepted that I had to deal with my dad and Veronica until I was able to afford to move out of this place. Then, about a week ago on my birthday, I was planning on going out with my friends and celebrating my 18th by buying a couple of beers and having a fun night. I've been saving up money for a while so I could splurge. But then my dad and Veronica decided that they had terrible news to give me, just so they could ruin my birthday. On the morning of my birthday, they told me that I needed to leave the house and find another place to stay. They told me that they were evicting me since Veronica had found out a couple of weeks ago that she was pregnant, and they wanted to use my room as a nursery for the new baby. My dad told me that they had come to this conclusion after a lot of thought, and they would rather that I did not beg or act all prophetic, so they'd reconsider because that would just ruin their happy mojo. Veronica told me that since I was an adult now, I needed to look out for myself, and this could be the start of something great. She tried her best to sound concerned and hopeful, but all I heard was a conniving snake trying to get me kicked out of my house. I tried to tone down the panic that I was feeling and decided to be rational with them, because I knew that crying, kicking, and screaming weren't going to get me anywhere with these people. They had no sympathy for me, so I told them that legally they couldn't evict me without notice, and that they needed to wait for a couple of months until I was able to find a place for myself. I honestly had no idea what I was talking about, but I'm pretty sure that a law like that exists. My dad didn't fall for it though and told me that he had everything worked out with his lawyer already, and he highly doubted that I had enough money or resources to come after them legally anyway, which he was right about. I didn't have either of those. So I suggested that I could pay rent for as long as I would live with them, and Veronica shot that down instantly by telling me that rent was not the problem, and that she just didn't want unnecessary people to deal with when she was pregnant. so I needed to vacate the house anyway, just so she could have a peaceful pregnancy. I was grasping for straws, but I still made a last attempt and asked my dad if it would be okay if I moved to the basement or something because I was pretty desperate. And my dad still said no. He worked in a bank and made a decent income, so much so that Veronica had actually quit her job to be a stay-at-home wife, so I knew that money was not the problem. After some bickering, I realized I couldn't change their minds and they wanted me out at any cost. Now that I was an adult, they could kick me out without any legal repercussions, and I couldn't even do anything about it. So, I accepted defeat and went up to my room to pack my things and leave. I had no idea if my grandfather would be able to take me in or not. One of the major reasons that I hadn't moved in with him against my dad's orders was because he wasn't very financially stable. He'd been a high school science teacher, but was now retired. He had an unfortunate gambling addiction when my dad was in his 20s, which really messed up his savings, and he relied on my father heavily. He could barely even support himself. So, I had no idea how he'd be able to support me as well, and that's why I hadn't moved in with him earlier. But now I had no other choice. To be fair, it wasn't like my grandfather was starving or something. He lived modestly, and I could get used to it. But I didn't want to push him into a corner. Without thinking much, I headed over to my grandfather's place. Once I was there, I told him what my father had said. For about a year now, I'd been trying not to worry about this, but somewhere deep down, I'd known that this day would come. I also had to worry about how I would pay for college because I was supposed to start in the fall, and that was just a couple of months away. Thinking about all of that just made me overwhelmed, and so I started crying. That's when my grandfather told me that he'd had enough and he'd seen enough. So it was time to do what he should have done several years ago. I didn't understand what was going on, and neither did he tell me. But he went into another room to make a phone call. I tried to eavesdrop, but I could barely hear anything, so I gave up trying. After almost an hour and a half, my grandfather finally came out of that room and told me that I had nothing to worry about anymore. I could live with him now, and I wouldn't have to worry about college either. I tried to ask him what was going on, but he told me that it was none of my business right now, and he sounded really upset. So I didn't push it further. Then he told me to go enjoy my day with my friends like I planned to because my 18th birthday was not a day for me to sit at home and mope. Besides, now that things were all right, I had nothing to worry about, so I could go out and enjoy myself. After deciding to make the most of my day now that my problems seemed to be solved, I went out with my friends. I kept my phone on silent for the evening in case my dad called and had something to say. I didn't want to let him ruin my evening like he'd ruined the rest of my day. I didn't find out about his texts and calls until I got back to my grandfather's place, which wasn't until almost 10 in the night. I don't know what got into him, but it appeared to me that he had suddenly developed a conscience somehow and was begging me to come back. I didn't reply to him immediately but waited until the next morning to say that I won't be coming back. I didn't hold back and told him the reason that I wasn't coming back was because he'd never treated me well. And now that I finally had a chance to be happy, I wasn't going to give that up. Also, because Veronica was even worse than him, and I couldn't bear the thought of going back to living with him again. He controlled me for a long time, but now that I was an adult, I could choose where I wanted to live, and he had no right to tell me to come back, especially not after how he and his wife had kicked me out just the day before. After I sent those texts, I received one long text back from my father, and it was a pretty sad one too. He told me that he thought about things in private and came across an old photo album of me in his office, which just reminded him of all the promises that he'd made to my mother. It felt like he was letting her down right now by putting Veronica and the new baby over me. So he wanted me to give him one last chance and actually be a better father this time around because the news of the new pregnancy had just spooked him a little bit, which is why he'd done whatever Veronica asked of him without a second thought. But now he realized that he shouldn't have kicked me out and wanted me to come back desperately. I didn't reply to that text because I knew that he was trying to manipulate me. But I just didn't understand what he was going to gain from this, and I still don't get it. It's been a week, and he's been texting me every day, constantly reminding me of a couple of good times from my childhood and telling me how sorry he is for how he treated me. Initially, I thought that he was trying to manipulate me, but now I just don't know anymore. I tried to talk to my grandfather about it, but he just told me not to fall for his act and seemed very put off by his son's behavior. I feel kind of sorry for my dad because now he's finally trying to be nice to me, but I don't want to go back anymore, and I feel like a jerk for some reason. The rational part of my brain knows that this is what's right for me, but a part of me just wants to go back and see what can be and if my dad will actually change or not. I don't know why, but he's trying to be a good father and make me come back even though he knows Veronica won't like it. But he's willing to put up with her outburst just to get me back, and I feel like I owe him a second chance. Yesterday, he texted me and said that he was willing to even beg on his knees for me to come back if that's what it was going to take. And I felt sorry, but I still didn't feel sure enough to reply. And it's making me feel guilty for not wanting to go back to my father's house even though he's begging me to return. Update 1. So, I've made up my mind. I'm not going back to my dad's house, and I don't think he meant any of what he said. I just discovered that the reason my dad's been begging me to come back has nothing to do with me but more to do with his lifestyle and maintaining it, if you catch my drift. I sat my grandfather down and told him all about how my dad was begging me to come back, and I still didn't want to go, and it was just making me feel like a horrible human being, and I was feeling very guilty about it. I tried to talk to him about this before, but he just told me not to fall for it and left it at that. This time, I felt like I needed to get all of this out of my system, even if he wasn't any help. After hearing me out, my grandfather got really serious and told me that he wasn't allowed to talk to me about this, but he felt like it was finally time that I knew. He then told me that ever since I was a kid, my dad didn't have to pay for anything to do with me, and that it was all my mother's family contributing and funding my upbringing. Now that I've been kicked out of my father's house, my grandfather had spoken to my mom's family and told them about how I was being treated, which is why they decided that I must now live with my grandfather. They were pretty pissed off at him as well for allowing this to go on for so many years and never saying a word about it. But now they insisted that I live with my grandfather. My dad didn't know about any of this and found out only a couple of days ago after he kicked me out. And my grandfather told him about this. My grandfather was the bridge between my mother's family and my dad and had been passing the money to him, which my mother's family would send. My dad always assumed that it was my grandfather funding everything, and my grandfather never corrected him because he knew that my dad didn't like my mother's side and wouldn't take money from them, which would, in turn, affect me because my dad was never willing to spend money on me. So he kept it a secret and pretended like he was giving my dad money to bring me up. My mother's family was pretty rich, so it was like huge amounts of money, which is probably why I went to a private school for so long, because my dad would never have wanted to spend money like that on me. Unfortunately, after my dad married Veronica, he started keeping those funds from me and forced me to get a job just so I could afford even basic things like going out once in a while and buying clothes and shoes that I desperately needed because I'd outgrown the previous ones. I mean, I know it's not exactly like he was depriving me of food or anything, but it still felt pretty bad. My grandfather still didn't tell my mother's side anything because he was afraid of the consequences and didn't know what they would have to say about this, so he just kept it all quiet. But once I got kicked out, he realized that he had to speak up for my sake and finally told them the truth. I was mad at my grandfather for never telling me about any of this, but then he told me that he had no option but my mother's family wanted this to be a secret. Apparently, they didn't want me to know that they were the ones paying for everything because then I'd probably want to meet them. And they didn't want to meet me, not because they didn't like me, but only because they said that I looked too much like my mother and they couldn't bring themselves to do it. So it was more of an emotional reason than a practical one that stopped my grandfather from telling me anything. I was a little mad at him for never stepping up and telling them how my father and Veronica were treating me as well. But he said that he was afraid that if he spoke up about it, my mother's family would intervene and have me taken away from them, and then he'd never get to see me again. It was an irrational fear, but he was still afraid of it. We talked things out, and I have to admit, I'm still trying to process a lot of it, but at least I know the truth now. And I'm definitely not going to fall for my dad's manipulation because he's only trying to get me back so my mother's family will continue sending him the money, and he can use it for his benefit. I knew that his new avatar was too good to be true anyway, so I'm not too upset about any of this. Update 2. So after learning the truth about why my father was so desperate to get me back, I blocked him. It's been a couple of days since then, and since he can't contact me, he started using Veronica's number to text me. Even she called me to let me know that I was being horrible to my father. I didn't have her number saved, so I accidentally answered the call. As soon as I heard her voice on the other end, I wanted to hang up, but curiosity got the better of me, and I stayed. She pretended like she was crying and told me through mock sobs that my dad was really upset and she couldn't see him like this, especially in her condition, as if she had a disease or something. I told her that I wasn't interested in speaking to her, and she handed over the phone to my dad, who was about to say something. But I cut him off and said that he could drop his little act now because I knew the truth, and I wasn't going to fall for it. He said that he didn't know what I was talking about, so I told him that maybe my mother's family could explain better, and then hung up and blocked Veronica's number as well. It was pretty satisfying to hand it back to them, and my grandfather thinks that I dealt with it well. In other news, I spoke to my grandfather, and I told him that I really wanted to meet my mother's family, even though I knew that they didn't want me to meet them because it was hard for them to see me. But I just had to see these people and thank them for everything that they did for me. It was a little difficult, but my grandfather finally managed to convince them to fly down here and meet me for the first time. I have seen pictures of my mother's family, her parents, and her older brother, but I guess meeting them is going to be very, very different. I don't know what to expect, and there's still a couple of days to go before I have to see them. But I'm excited, and I know that no matter what, they're going to love me. And even though this is my first time ever seeing them in person, I know that I'll love them too. Update 3. Hey, I'm back from my first meeting with my mother's family, and I'm happy to say that it went well. My grandfather was there with me every step of the way, and I'm glad for it because I was pretty nervous. My other grandparents were also lovely people, and my uncle was actually just the same person as I am, but just a lot older. All of us cried a little when we saw each other, which was pretty awkward for the other guests at the restaurant to see. But we didn't care. We were just so happy to meet each other. Once we got over the emotional part of the meeting, they started asking me about my life and interests, and I told them everything. They actually seemed to be interested and cared about me. They also told me that I didn't need to worry about my college funds because they had it all planned out but had forgotten to mention it to my grandfather. That was a huge relief as well. We had a great time overall, and we're going to meet a couple more times before they fly back home next week. They promised me that we're going to meet every month, and they'll either have me fly out to them or they'll come to me. But we definitely will catch up every month, and I'm really happy about it. My sister and I have always had a distant relationship, primarily due to the significant age gap between us. Our parents, too, treated us differently from the very beginning. Before my sister was born, our family faced a challenging period when my dad lost his job. Forced to rent out our house and move into a smaller place, we had to make numerous adjustments with limited resources. Despite my dad's efforts to find employment, it became increasingly difficult. Both my parents started submitting job applications, and eventually, my mom received a call from an old contact offering a position in a new venture. The pay wasn't substantial, but it was an improvement from our previous situation. 6 months later, my dad was finally hired, and while we were doing better, We still had debts to settle. 3 months after losing his job, we had moved and rented out our house. Realizing that it would take time for things to return to normal, we continued renting. A year later, my mom was pregnant, prompting us to move into a slightly larger apartment. Despite the improved circumstances, my parents remained cautious with money. Throughout this time, my communication with my parents dwindled to brief greetings and goodbyes. Their preoccupation with financial worries dominated our conversations. When we first shifted, I used to eagerly await their return, but both were exhausted and barely acknowledged me. Despite my efforts to be independent and help out, they seemed oblivious. After our second move, all attention shifted to my pregnant mom. I tried to express my feelings, but she was easily irritated and dismissed my attempts at conversation. My dad, working long hours, would arrive home later than my mom, often ignoring me. I felt like a stranger in my own home, crying myself to sleep while they remained indifferent. 3 months after my dad lost his job, I was transferred to a public school, never returning to my previous one. The loneliness at home and the lack of friends at the new school intensified my desire to reconnect with my old life. As my mom's pregnancy progressed, they seemed to forget my existence entirely. I felt sad and hurt, unable to address the situation. In the final trimester of my mom's pregnancy, with the impending birth just days away, I found myself alone at home while she was at the hospital. Despite my solitude, I refrained from complaining, only wishing for her well-being and the chance to meet the new addition to our family. Upon their return, the baby took center stage, leaving me feeling ignored and isolated. When I asked to see the baby, my mom became agitated, instructing me to leave, and my dad remained silent. I never had the chance to spend quality time with my sister or hold her. My mom was extremely protective, and although my dad attempted a few times to let me be near her, my mom always intervened. It felt as though she harbored a deep resentment towards me, and I couldn't fathom why. A few months after my mom's recovery, my parents decided to move back into the house we owned. I held onto a glimmer of hope that returning home would bring about a return to normalcy. However, as time passed, their attitude towards me worsened. One day, I had a breakdown in front of them, waking up my sister in the process. This led to anger from all of them, and I found myself locked in my room, crying myself to sleep. I soon realized that even though we now own a house, it wasn't spacious. With only 2 bedrooms, they placed me in the attic to make room for my sister. Cleaning the attic was my responsibility, and it was a horrible, cold, and dark place. Without any wiring, there was no possibility of light. I often went up there when my parents had gone to bed, only to sneak back down and sleep on the couch. They caught me a few times but didn't seem to care, as long as I stayed out of their way. As I grew older, I got a job that they were unaware of. When I received my first paycheck, I initially wanted to buy them something in the hopes of gaining their approval. However, I talked myself out of it, collecting the money without spending it on myself either. Eventually, it was time for university, and although I had little money, it wasn't enough to cover the fees, food, and living costs. When I brought up the idea of university, they outright declined, claiming they didn't have much. Their focus remained on my sister, and I didn't hold it against her. We never talked much growing up, and any attempt to bond would result in unnecessary drama. It seemed better for both of us to keep our distance. Despite the challenges, my only chance of going to university was securing a full scholarship. I applied for numerous scholarships using a neighbor's laptop, and fortunately, I managed to get into a good university. I couldn't secure a full scholarship, forcing me to cover my own living and food expenses for university, which was located 2 states away. Determined to make it work, I reached out to the kind cafe owner for a job. She was an older lady, sweet and experienced, having been at the cafe for quite some time. Upon moving, I realized my parents were indifferent to my absence. They wouldn't even notice if I hadn't informed them. The challenge of finding affordable housing seemed daunting given the high costs and required down payments. Seeking refuge, I approached the cafe owner, explaining my situation. She empathized with my predicament and offered a room upstairs, deducting the cost from my paycheck. Grateful for a roof over my head, I took on additional jobs in my free time. The cafe owner, expressing genuine concern for me, surprised me with her kindness. Slowly, I settled into my new life, successfully navigating university and securing a position through pre-placements. With the prospect of a stable job, I purchased expensive clothes for the first time, realizing my worn-out hoodie wouldn't suit the professional image I needed. The first person I shared my success with was the cafe owner, who had been a pillar of support when I needed it the most. She rejoiced with me, hugging and kissing me while expressing pride in my accomplishments. I felt a deep connection with her. She had become like family, and I genuinely loved her. After graduating, I needed to find a place closer to my job, and the cafe owner accompanied me to help make the decision. Even after settling in, I maintained a close relationship with her, visiting once or twice a month and keeping regular contact. Despite my efforts, my attempts to reach out to my parents were met with silence. They never answered my calls, and when my sister occasionally picked up, the conversations felt awkward. During my time at work, I made friends who, despite my introverted nature, made an effort to include me. They invited me to outings, and though I usually declined, their persistence occasionally convinced me to join in. As my life continued to unfold, about a year later, the company generously distributed free tickets for a mini vacation. Though I had never used my vacation days before, I decided to seize the opportunity and bring along the only family I knew, the kind cafe owner I affectionately called Auntie. She wasn't old enough to be a grandma, and I insisted on her being my travel companion. My friends at the company were intrigued and excited to meet Auntie. Interestingly, she turned out to be an extrovert and quickly became friends with my colleagues. During the trip, a guy approached me and Auntie, in her exuberance, encouraged me to spend time with him. To my surprise, that encounter led to a deeper connection, and he eventually became my husband. He lived conveniently close to where I worked. Upon returning from the vacation, my now husband called me and asked me out. We dated for 2 months, were in a relationship for 3 years, and have now been happily married for 4 years. Despite the joyous occasion, my past with my family loomed in the background. When I invited my parents and sister to my wedding, they were no-shows. My then-fiancé was aware of the situation and was understandably upset, even contemplating not inviting them. A year or 2 later, my sister got married, and I was not on the guest list. I saw pictures online and congratulated her, understanding that her lavish wedding was likely funded by our parents. It didn't bother me. I had moved on and found happiness in my life. During this time, I was pregnant with our first child, and my husband, along with his supportive parents, became my new family. Auntie also visited frequently, and sometimes our home hosted a gathering of all our loved ones during my pregnancy. One day, my aunt received a letter in my name, and I was surprised to find out it was from my parents. I thought they might have heard about my pregnancy and wanted to reach out. I had informed them of my university address years ago, and my contact information had changed since then. At 5 months pregnant, I spoke to my husband about it, and he was understandably hesitant, given the sudden reappearance of my estranged parents after years of silence. My husband, concerned about potential inappropriate content in the letter, asked if he could read it first. He was always careful around me, especially since I was pregnant. When my aunt brought the letter 2 to 3 days later, my husband's expression turned to disgust as he read its contents. He chose not to share the details with me, advising against reading it and simply comforting me with hugs and empathy. Eventually, I decided to face the reality and asked my aunt to read the letter aloud. To my dismay, my parents had lost their house, which was apparently mortgaged for my sister's extravagant wedding with her now divorced husband. My parents had invested their money in it too. Now they were asking me to pay back the money they claimed I owed them for the years they took care of me. My sister's ex-husband refused to pay the mortgage, and she couldn't afford it either. Sitting there with a blank face, my husband's comforting arms around me. I felt pure disappointment. That night, I went to sleep crying, feeling guilty for letting my baby be affected by my selfish parents. However, I decided not to let them disrupt my happiness. I sought legal advice, and my lawyer sent them a warning about potential harassment charges if they continued to contact me. Another letter addressed child neglect, emphasizing that I owed them nothing, from the clothes I wore to the food I ate to the house I owned. I made it clear that my success, marriage, and the life I had built were a result of my and my husband's hard work and efforts. Before all this unfolded, I worked diligently to put myself through school and college. I secured a job and earned promotions through my hard work and dedication. Throughout these milestones, my parents were absent. They neither supported nor contributed financially. The meager scraps I turned into sandwiches and the leftovers I barely ate from their table did not constitute genuine care or support. In response to their claim that I owed them for the years they supposedly took care of me, I asserted that they had contacted the wrong child. The true architect of their financial predicament was their dear daughter, who had mortgaged the house they had put in her name. I made it clear that they had dug their own hole and should climb out of it by themselves. An update, 2 months later, brings me close to my delivery date. As far as I know, my parents have not attempted to contact me again. My sister, it seems, gave the house to the bank, and I'm unsure if they owe any more debts. They appear to be back to where they started, and with this update, I consider this chapter of my life concluded. I'd rather prioritize spending quality time with you over concerning myself with status or honor, spoke the woman to me. She happened to be the second daughter of the CEO of the company where I am employed, but more importantly, she was my beloved wife. Sadly, she departed from this world prematurely, leaving behind no parting words. 2 years had elapsed since her passing when a woman approached me, claiming to be my wife's sister. My name is Tyler Brown, 34 years old, I introduced myself. Raised solely by my mother due to my absent father, I never perceived my family dynamics as complicated, despite their divorce being attributed to trivial disputes. My mother always praised my forward-looking and earnest nature, which I cherished dearly. However, tragedy struck when she unexpectedly passed away during my high school years. Taken in by my grandparents, I adopted my mother's advice to confront life with determination. At 27, I married an extraordinary woman named Mary Johnson, who encouraged me to give my best every day. Mary, employed in HR, and I, working in the planning department of the same company, embarked on our daily routine together. Despite being the CEO's younger daughter, Mary chose to conceal her identity at work, preferring to be recognized for her merit rather than her lineage. Her decision both surprised and impressed me, deepening my love for her. Following a nervous courtship of 2 years, we tied the knot. Meeting Mary's family, particularly her father, filled me with apprehension. However, his warm laughter eased my nerves as he assured me that my worth and compatibility with Mary were evident, irrespective of the company's hierarchy. He even jestingly mentioned his elder daughter, Nancy, as a potential successor, emphasizing that she would bring home a worthy partner someday. Beside him, Nancy exuded a demure demeanor, contrasting with Mary's vibrant personality. Confirming her father's words, Mary remarked, "You know, unlike me, my sister has always been smart. It seems she wants to get married soon, but either her standards are too high or she's too beautiful that nobody dares to approach her." At that moment, I was overwhelmed with happiness for having received permission to marry. The married life that began with Mary was pure bliss. Motivated at work, people around me half-jokingly said, "You could become the next CEO, I guess." But the idea seemed daunting. Mary herself commented, "Sure, any woman might dream of being a CEO's wife, but that must be so busy. I'd rather have more time with Tyler than money or status." Her sentiment filled me with joy. Indeed, she preferred visiting her favorite Cosmos fields over fancy restaurants whenever we had the time. I thought we have a leisurely life ahead, perhaps with children. Less than a year into our marriage, Mary collapsed and was rushed to the hospital for examination. The diagnosis left me numb, while her father was deeply shocked. Mary tried to stay positive, saying, "It's okay. Maybe it'll clear up sooner than we think," with a laugh. But in private, she broke down. "If anything happens to me, Tyler, please keep looking forward and live," she said, tearfully. "I can't help crying when I see your face. I'll write you a letter." However, she left this world too quickly to write anything. When I rushed from work to the hospital, only the sobs of her father and sister Nancy could be heard in her room. The funeral proceeded mechanically, and the CEO told me to take some time off work, saying, "There's no need to force yourself to continue." That night, alone at home, I cried until dawn, holding a photo of Mary laughing amidst the cosmos fields. As the sun rose, I remembered her words and my mother's, realizing I had to face forward. I called the CEO immediately. "I'd like to return to work tomorrow if possible," I said. From the next day onwards, I threw myself into work, consumed by it. After work, I'd rush home to talk about recent events in front of Mary's photo and clean up her room, ensuring I never forgot about her. Of course, I felt lonely, but I had resolved to live on my own. After a few years passed, the CEO called me in, and we met in a formal private dining room. "Do you have any interest in taking over the company? Even setting aside Mary's situation, your efforts and capabilities are such that I believe I can entrust it to you," he said, looking me straight in the eye. I had only worked hard these past 2 years with the intention of repaying him for bringing Mary into my life. The thought of becoming the next president myself was bewildering. "To encourage me," he continued, "Mary was looking forward to you becoming the next CEO as well." She never mentioned such a thing to me, but maybe she was just trying to be considerate, thinking it's better not to become the CEO, I replied. "No, I heard it from Nancy," he said, mentioning his elder daughter's name as if on cue. The door to the private room opened and Nancy entered. "Good evening. It's been a while." She greeted me with her usual long hair and dignified voice, sitting next to the CEO. Then he approached the real topic of discussion. "Of course, we've considered your abilities and believe you can take on the role of the next CEO. After much thought, would you marry Nancy?" Excuse me. I wanted to believe it was some joke, but there was no hint of jest in either of their expressions. However, no matter the excuses, the conclusion wouldn't change. "I'm sorry, but I must decline." "There's the matter of Mary," I said firmly. "I understand how you feel, but what if it was her request?" Nancy began to reveal something she hadn't had much chance to talk about. After Mary's hospitalization, she had made frequent visits to her, as if to make up for lost time. During their alone time, Mary often mentioned looking forward to me becoming the CEO. Furthermore, it was right before Mary passed away that she held my hand and asked me to please look after Tyler if something happens. I don't think she meant marriage by that, but embarrassingly, I haven't had much luck myself, Nancy admitted. But I want to consider my father's situation. "Of course, it would be a marriage in name only, if you prefer," she said. Hearing about Mary's wishes I was unaware of left me with a complicated feeling. I was facing their desperate pleas and Mary's will, which moved me drastically. Then I said, "I understand," amidst my mixed thoughts. Those were the words that came out, thinking it would be for Mary's sake. The conversation progressed smoothly from there, and Nancy was to come live at my place. It was to be a marriage in name only, though she was working at a company known to her father, and we agreed not to interfere with each other's lives. Even though it was Mary's sister, the idea of living with another woman in a house filled with memories of Mary was something I had reservations about. Would it be all right if I paid my respects to Mary right away? On her first visit to my house, seeing Nancy close her eyes and pray in front of Mary's photo somehow made me feel more accepting. "I know I can't compare to her, but if there's anything I can support you with, please let me know," Nancy said as she started to unpack her things. "It might still be a long way off before I actually become the CEO, but if that time comes, perhaps I would need someone's support," I admitted. I was still in doubt if it was really okay with Nancy. But before I knew it, As she struggled to carry a cardboard box with her slender arms, I naturally offered, "I can help with that." Surprised by my voice, she lost her grip and dropped the box. "I'm sorry," she apologized repeatedly. Seeing her, I said, "If there's anything I can do to help, please let me support you," as I started picking up scattered albums and other items. No, I can take care of myself." She hurriedly gathered the scattered items. Honestly, her actions made me curious. In a way, she possibly wasn't entirely happy about marrying me, even if it was for her father or sister's sake. Still, I decided to maintain some distance and said, "Then I'll go to the city hall. Feel free to use anything in the house." Holding the already completed marriage registration form for Nancy and me, I left the room. As I drove to the city hall, my mind was swirling with all sorts of thoughts. I needed to hurry before the office closed, but somehow my mind was adrift, and I found myself driving leisurely. The smile that Nancy had given me when she said, "Take care," kept coming back to me, because it reminded me so much of Mary. Moreover, there were several sheets of stationery that I saw among Nancy's belongings. On the sheets, there was one adorned with Mary's favorite flowers, cosmos, the same ones I happened upon in front of me. There was a park near the city hall that was filled with beautiful swaying cosmos. I couldn't help but stop the car and just stand there, lost in thought. Mary would have been delighted to see this. I wish we could have seen it together, I pondered, losing track of time. Eventually, I snapped back to reality, finished my errands, and went home. "I'm sorry, but I need to rest a bit," I said to Nancy, who was still busy with her tasks. And then I retreated to my bed in my room alone. My thoughts wandered to Mary and her family. I remembered their comments, like Mary was looking forward to you becoming the CEO, or it was right before Mary passed away. She held my hand and said, "Please take care of Tyler if anything happens." I had always thought Mary was sincere and always spoke her mind. Was she even just being considerate of me? Or could it be? As if to interrupt these troubling thoughts, I fell into a deep sleep, perhaps due to the recent day's business. When I woke up, the day had already changed, and the house was silent. I hadn't prepared anything for the next day's work, and more importantly, I had left Nancy alone for too long. I hadn't even told her where she could sleep. Deciding to at least get a glass of water, I left my bedroom. That's when I saw Nancy's figure illuminated by the moonlight in front of Mary's photo. Perhaps she decided to stay in the living room with her belongings. Not wanting to wake me, she must have had so much she wanted to talk to Mary about. When I was about to apologize by feeling guilty about my earlier thoughts, I heard her whisper, "Thank you, Mary." I stopped in my tracks, not wanting to intrude on the moment between sisters. That was just it. It seemed like Nancy was smiling in the moonlight, and there was the stationery paper adorned with cosmos in her hands. Before I could connect all the dots, I felt a chill run down my spine. Could it really be? It didn't take long for my suspicions to turn into certainty. Now everything will bow to me. At that moment, my fear turned into anger. "What do you mean by that, Nancy? You're awake," she exclaimed, startled by the light I turned on. In her voice, she turned towards me, visibly shaken, and began to ramble like a child caught in a lie. I thought I'd sleep by Mary's side tonight, but I didn't respond, fixated on one thing she noticed and tried to hide. But I picked it up before she could. That was the stationery paper with Cosmos printed on it, addressed to Tyler, in familiar handwriting. "This is Mary's handwriting, isn't it? Why do you have this?" I demanded. "Oh no, that's," she stammered, struggling for an excuse. I decided to open the letter rather than wait for her answer. Trembling, I pulled out several letters from inside. Letters in Mary's handwriting, filled with memories of us and apologies for leaving ahead. Mary had indeed left me letters as promised in her hospital room. A mix of emotions threatened to overwhelm me. As one sentence caught my eye, my anger reignited. "I hate to say this about family, but be careful of my sister. She's always been a bit crafty," I said, looking back at Nancy. Her furrowed brows seemed to be searching for her next move, and there was a cunning, calculating expression on her face. It seemed she might have been the first to discover and read Mary's letters. hiding them to twist Mary's last wishes to her advantage, exploiting the fact that Mary was no longer here to speak for herself. You just wanted to be the CEO's wife, didn't you? I questioned Nancy, putting the letters back into the envelope neatly and slipping them into my left pocket, determined not to let Mary be tarnished by her any longer. Then, as if conceding everything, the woman in front of me sighed, then defiantly began to speak. That's right. But think about it. Don't you think I'm far more suitable to be the CEO's wife than some woman who has no abilities other than flattering people? But no one was interested in you, right? She seemed taken aback by my words for a moment, but quickly smirked and said, yes, but I'll settle for you. Besides, the marriage certificate has already been filed. With that, she arrogantly leaned back. As she spoke, I pulled a crumpled envelope from my right pocket and dropped the marriage certificate it contained onto the floor. She hastily picked it up, looking up at me with a gaze that was almost insane. I couldn't help but be curious, so I went directly to ask your father about your past instead of going to the city hall. You've been flaunting around as the CEO's daughter, constantly searching for a capable man, haven't you? He said you were looking for someone suitable for the next CEO, but in reality, you were just looking for someone to marry for status and honor. I wasn't sure why I became so fixated on Nancy at that moment. Perhaps it was the cosmos field that suddenly appeared in front of my car on my way to the city hall that made me stop, looking back. Maybe Mary was the one who stopped me. Please, just leave now. Never distort Mary's feelings again, I managed to say, holding back my anger. Then Nancy clenched her teeth and hissed, Why? Why doesn't anything go my way? She stormed out of the house, taking only her smartphone and wallet. She must have been cornered, unable to make calm decisions. But that's no excuse to disrespect my beloved Mary, even if they were sisters. I searched through the cardboard boxes left in the living room and, as expected, found another piece of stationery paper with Cosmos on it. Holding the letter addressed to Dad, I hurried to the CEO's place, despite the late hour. Nancy did such a thing, reading the hidden letters from Mary. The CEO showed a complex expression, just like mine earlier. He didn't go through the contents in detail, but shared a specific part with me in Mary's handwriting. It said, Tyler is hardworking and dedicated, but he tends to take on too much by himself. So, Dad, please don't push him to be a successor unnecessarily. Mary never wanted me to become the CEO. She loved me for who I am, not for the title. On the contrary, how nasty that woman was. Tyler, I'm truly sorry. Nancy has always been secretive, unlike Mary, but to think she would deceive even me. The CEO apologized repeatedly. I was at a loss about what to do next. However, gently returning the letters to the envelope, he looked at me directly and said, I won't interfere in your life anymore. But if you're willing, would you consider being part of the family as my son-in-law has my beloved Mary's husband? His words saved me, and even years later, I am still working under him. He treats me as his son-in-law and potential successor. Sometimes sternly, but always with love. Under one condition, I decided to take over as CEO, never to let Nancy claim to be part of Mary's family again. The CEO had intended to disown her even before I said anything. And indeed, he has cut off all contact with her since then. Moreover, he is considering taking legal action against her for destroying private documents under criminal law. As for her, she has lost her job, her family, and the title she so depended on, wandering aimlessly somewhere. As following my beloved family's advice, I simply look forward. I am now too busy living my life to spare her any thought. I want to talk to your father about a mugging incident involving him. Is he at home now? Yes, he's here. Do you want to see him? The police officer seemed puzzled by my tone for a moment, but eventually said, Please, let me see him. So I led the police officer into the house and opened the door. My father is here, I said. The police officer was stunned to see my father there. This incident happened a few months ago. My name is James, and I'm a fourth-year university student. I've recently decided to work for a major company, but there's still something I'm undecided about, whether or not to take over my father's company. You see, my father is the president of a small factory. When I was younger, I used to aspire to take over the factory and become a president like him. However, those feelings faded during my rebellious phase. I started feeling embarrassed by my father, who was always covered in oil stains from his work clothes. This feeling persisted even as I entered my teenage years and somewhere in my heart, even now as an adult. Despite that, working part-time jobs has given me a newfound respect for my father, who works hard while supporting many employees and their families. But still, I couldn't shake the feeling that a salaryman in a suit, working hard, is cooler than my father. One day, while shopping with my father, we were suddenly called out from behind. James, my father, and I turned around together. There stood a man around my father's age named Jack. "Long time no see," he said. It turned out Jack was a high school classmate of my father's and happened to be on an outside sales trip, wearing a suit representing a famous large company. After revealing his impressive job, Jack asked my father, "Did you take over the family business after all?" My father replied, "Oh yeah, we're still managing somehow." Jack scoffed. "That dirty little factory of yours. You've become quite something as its president, and you're only a high school graduate. That's impossible. You really are pathetic." I was shocked by Jack's words. Although I knew my father had taken over the factory after graduating from high school, I never expected a classmate to mock him like that. Nonetheless, Jack continued to smile silently at my father. No, unfortunately, I didn't manage to make my father's factory bigger. Despite my high school dreams of taking over the company and expanding it, I lacked the necessary business sense, and that dream didn't come true. Laughs. I guess I couldn't help it. I'm good with my hands, but my head isn't very business savvy. However, it's a relief that we didn't go bankrupt. Jack seemed to find the situation amusing, laughing heartily and playfully slapping my father on the shoulder. "You're good with your hands, but your head isn't very good. But it's good that you didn't go bankrupt. I thought guys like you were going bankrupt," he chuckled. After exchanging some more banter, Jack mentioned he had more work to do and suggested catching up at the next reunion. With that, he left, leaving my father looking a bit awkward. He turned to me and suggested, "Shall we go?" We resumed our shopping, but at that moment, I couldn't help feeling that my father's work was being mocked, and I didn't offer any rebuttal. The balance between taking over my father's company and continuing to work for a famous large company tilted heavily towards the latter. A few weeks later, by chance, my father's alumni association was held at the bar where I worked part-time. The place was bustling with customers, and I didn't have many opportunities to attend to the table where my father's alumni association was taking place. Although I initially thought it was lucky, when I eventually had the chance to go to that table, I felt a bit embarrassed about serving drinks to my father's alumni association. Despite feeling uncomfortable, I kept quiet because it was my job. Our bar had private rooms, and when I arrived at the table where my father's alumni association was being held in one of the rented-out large rooms, my father, who happened to be near the entrance, greeted me with a smile. "Oh, James, are you his son?" My father asked the woman next to him, who then introduced me as his son. I politely greeted them and arranged the drinks on the table. With eyes resembling my father's and a serious demeanor similar to his, I served the drinks while his drunken classmates teased me, and I awkwardly laughed along. Jack, who was sitting at a table nearby, noticed us and chimed in. "We met recently too, James, right? Are you planning to take over your father's small factory?" I answered honestly, "No, I'm still thinking about it." With an alcoholic breath that disgusted me, Jack loudly proclaimed, "Stop it. Your father's company is nothing special. James should work for a company like me instead of taking over such a company." He then proceeded to brag about his career history, but something seemed off. He had claimed to be in sales when we last met, but now he said he was the head of accounting. Sensing this discrepancy, I kept quiet, knowing it could be troublesome to point it out. However, my father, in his drunken state, spoke up, asking, "Has your department changed since we last met?" "It hasn't been that long. A few weeks ago, was it an urgent transfer? Did sales not suit you?" Jack looked flustered and nodded, admitting, "Yes, that's right. Sales wasn't for me. As soon as I transferred, I became the head of accounting." My father pointed out that the company Jack boasted about had been absorbed by a foreign company, and its accounting department was based overseas. This revelation drew laughter from the crowd. Embarrassed and regretful, Jack mumbled, "I'll go home," and left with heavy footsteps. People around us reassured my father that he hadn't done anything wrong, suggesting that Jack must have always been like that. Seeing my father praised for his honesty rather than being laughed at made me happy, even though he was drunk. My father appeared composed when he spoke up about what everyone else found difficult to address. Half a year has passed since then, and I still spend days contemplating whether or not to take over my father's company. My confusion only deepens day by day, and honestly, I don't know what to do. One day, while relaxing at home, the intercom rang. Since my mother wasn't there, I went to the entrance. "Yes, hello," I said. "You're James?" The visitor in uniformed clothes asked. Surprised and wondering if I had done something wrong, I replied with a stiff voice, "Yes." The police officer then mentioned something about a purse-snatching incident and said there was something they wanted to ask my father. "Purse snatching? My father?" I exclaimed. "Yes, your father is suspected of purse snatching." "Is he at home now?" the officer inquired. "Yes, he's here." "But do you want to see him?" I asked. The police officer seemed puzzled for a moment at my tone, but eventually said, "Please, let me see him." I led the police officer into my house and opened the door to the room. "My father is here," I said. The room had a Buddhist altar and a photograph of my father. I then informed the police officer that my father had passed away in a traffic accident, which left him frozen in shock. "I'm sorry for your loss," the police officer said. Curious, I asked who had accused my father of purse snatching, but the officer replied that it was personal information and couldn't be disclosed. After apologizing to me several times, the police officer left. A few days later, while working at my father's factory to fill the void left by his absence, Jack barged in. "Take me to your father. Return what he stole," he demanded loudly, his voice overpowering the noise from the large machines in the factory. I was surprised, and so were the other employees who stopped working and looked surprised. I addressed Jack, saying, My father isn't here." Jack insisted. "Then call him out right away. I'm having trouble because your father snatched something from me." I heard a voice from one of the employees murmuring, "Purse snatching? Is it our president?" But Jack remained adamant, crossing his arms and refusing to budge. He kept shouting, "Give me your father." In response, I questioned him. "My father is not the kind of person who would snatch purses. Are you sure you're not mistaken?" Jack insisted, "No, it was definitely your father. He must have been jealous of me working for a big company and snatched my bag. Fortunately, I didn't have my wallet or anything with me at that time, but it's unforgivable that he snatched something in the first place. The police are useless, so I came here myself to talk to him." I inquired about the timing of the incident, and Jack decisively replied, "About 2 weeks ago." The employees began to stir, seemingly confused by the commotion. When I pressed Jack again about the timeline, he grew angry at my persistence, shouting, "What's going on? You keep asking me over and over again. I said it was 2 weeks ago. An elite like me came all the way to this small and smelly factory just for this. Hurry up and let me talk to your father." Feeling a surge of heat in my chest, I was troubled not only by Jack's derogatory remarks about my father's workplace and colleagues, but also by his attempt to blame my father for purse snatching. My father had passed away in a traffic accident just 1 month ago and couldn't possibly be involved. I clarified this to Jack, who looked stunned and muttered, "Huh." I continued, "How could my father snatch purses when he passed away 1 month ago? Maybe there wasn't even any purse snatching at all." I knew Jack was lying because I had learned at our recent class reunion that he had always been a habitual liar since his school days. Furthermore, it turned out that Jack had been jealous of my father since their school days because the girl he liked had liked my father instead. He had always harbored unnecessary rivalry against my father due to such petty jealousy. I couldn't forgive Jack for trying to pin an unfounded accusation on my deceased father just because of such petty jealousy. As Jack continued to insist on his claim, someone else started shouting from another direction, "Your president wouldn't do something like that. Our president is someone who dresses seriously and walks around like an honest person. Sure, the reason why we are always short-handed is that the president teaches technology and encourages independence. He was a good person who always thought about the staff and business partners without thinking about profits." Voices praising my father rose one after another, and I was honestly moved. I felt ashamed of myself for ever thinking that my father's work was embarrassing. My father was a president who was respected by his staff and loved enough to be protected, even in such a situation. Jack's eyes filled with tears as he heard the voices of the factory workers defending my father. I delivered the final blow. "The fact that you tried to frame my father for a lie. I will definitely consult with the police." With that, Jack raised his voice and fled from the factory. Later, as promised, I went to the police to report that my father had been falsely accused by Jack. The evidence was a recording of Jack's statement made by one of the staff members, who had been thoughtful enough to record the argument. Thanks to this evidence, the police acted quickly, and Jack was caught in no time. Jack's lie about accusing someone of a crime became his own crime, and he ended up in jail for a while. I felt relieved that he got what he deserved. A few days later, someone claiming to be Jack's wife came to our house with a gift box to apologize to me and my mother. When I asked if it was because of what happened at the reunion that Jack had framed my father, Jack's wife sighed and confirmed that it was. She revealed that Jack was actually an elite who had been fired from his company and had been struggling to find a job. His obsession with being an elite led him to lie about his status. But when he got drunk, he ended up embarrassing himself with inconsistent lies. He began to resent my father and decided to frame him. Disgusted by his ridiculous reason for lying, I learned that Jack's wife intended to divorce him. Jack apparently had no children, so even if he got out of jail, no one would be waiting for him. After graduating from college, I decided to take over my father's company. One reason was because I was worried about the management of the company since my father had just passed away. Another reason was because I couldn't forget the voices of the staff members who had protected my father when Jack lied about him. I wanted to become a president who is loved and respected by staff members like them. That incident became a turning point for me. Belonging to the Faculty of Business Administration, I could manage the part of management that my father wasn't good at, but I had to learn from staff members about technology. They taught me many things, saying, "If it's for your son," and they also told me many stories about my father. Every time they did so, I realized how great my father was. After work, covered in oil stains, I spoke to his portrait. "It's embarrassing now that I used to think this is uncool. This dirt is proof of how hard my father worked. I'll do my best to become a president like you, and I'll definitely make your dream come true." I spoke to his portrait again and felt like my father smiled. I'm going to work hard from now on to become a president like him. I want to fulfill my father's dream of expanding the town factory that has been passed down since my grandfather's generation. My name is Diana, and as I grew up, I was the princess of a castle. I barely comprehended the wealth my parents possessed. Bless their souls, they had more money than some countries. However, they ensured I understood the value of every penny. "Money talks, but wisdom listens," Dad would say, while Mom insisted I learn how to budget before I could properly spell. Luxury life was a fairy tale until it wasn't. At the age of 12, their private jet crashed, turning my fairy tale into a stark reality overnight. Grandma took me in, and we lived in a modest house far removed from the opulence I was accustomed to. It was a different kind of life, where luxury was found in love and care rather than material things. My inheritance was a distant promise, locked away until I turned 25. So, I adapted, learned, and thrived under Grandma's guidance. College became my escape and grounding, and that's where Alex came into the picture. He was as far from my world as one could get, a scholarship kid with a heart of gold and a wit that could cut through any pretense. We clicked in a way I never expected. Bringing him home to meet Grandma was a nerve-wracking experience. I hadn't told him about the money. Better he doesn't know, not yet. Grandma had advised, and I saw the wisdom in her words. I wanted Alex to love me for me, not my bank account. Grandma, this is Alex. I introduced them, my stomach in knots. Nice to meet you, ma'am, Alex said, extending a hand that Grandma shook warmly. Sit, sit. Grandma gestured, her eyes twinkling as she took in Alex's nervous posture. You're the young man who's stolen my granddaughter's heart, she said. Alex blushed, a sheepish grin spreading across his face. Aita, I guess you could say that, ma'am. We sat down, and the conversation flowed more easily than I dared hope. Grandma shared stories of my parents, of me as a child. Stories that made Alex laugh and look at me with a warmth that made my heart swell. You've got a good one here, Grandma, he said, nodding towards me but looking at Alex. Takes after her mother, strong and kind. But don't let her fool you. She's got a bit of mischief in her too. Alex chuckled, squeezing my hand under the table. The evening went on, filled with laughter and shared stories. Alex fit into our world like he was always meant to be there. As he helped Grandma with the dishes afterward, I knew I had made the right choice in bringing him into this part of my life. Walking him out later, Alex turned to me, a serious look on his face. Your grandma's amazing, you know? Hearing about your parents, your life, I feel like I understand you more, he said. I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. I'm glad, Alex. There's a lot to me more than meets the eye, I guess. He smiled, pulling me into a hug. I'm here for all of it, every layer. Doesn't matter what's in your bank account, it's you I care about. I hugged him back tighter than I ever had before. In that moment, I knew I could trust him. But I also knew the weight of the secret I was keeping. It was a delicate balance, one I hoped wouldn't tip and spill over. The ride to Alex's parents' house was a quiet one, filled with the kind of silence that's too thick to cut through. I could tell Alex was nervous, his hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than usual. You sure you're ready for this? I asked, trying to break the ice. Yeah, just, my mom can be a bit much. Don't take anything she says to heart, okay? Alex's attempt at a reassuring smile didn't quite reach his eyes. The house loomed ahead, grand and imposing. As we pulled up, my stomach twisted into knots. This was it, no turning back now. We were barely through the door when Alex's mom, Gloria, made her entrance. Her eyes landed on me like two laser beams, sizing me up in a way that made my skin crawl. So, this is the girl you've been hiding, she said, her voice as cold as the marble floors. Mom, this is Alex, began Alex, but Gloria waved him off. I know who she is. Come, let's sit. I prepared some tea. Her command was not to be ignored, leading us into a living room that felt more like a showroom. The tea was served, and Gloria wasted no time. I hear you were raised by your grandmother. Must have been quite the humble upbringing, she said, the word humble sounding more like an insult. I clenched my jaw, fighting to keep my cool. My grandma taught me a lot about life, important stuff, not just fluff, I retorted. Gloria's lips twitched in a smirk. I see. And your parents, gone too soon, I heard. Tragic, really. How does one cope without the proper guidance? Alex jumped in, clearly uncomfortable. Mom, that's enough. Let's not. No, it's okay, Alex. I interrupted, feeling a surge of defiance. Yeah, my folks are gone, and yeah, it was tough. But I got through it. Made me who I am. Gloria sipped her tea, her gaze never wavering. Interesting. And what about your future, dear? Any plans? Or are you just riding along on my son's coattails? That stung. I took a deep breath, reminding myself why I was here. I've got plans, big ones, and I don't need to ride on anyone's coattails to make them happen. The air was thick with tension. Alex, bless him, tried to change the subject. Mom, let's not do this, okay? We're here to enjoy each other's company, he interjected. Gloria set down her teacup, a calculated move. I'm merely trying to understand the woman my son has chosen. You can't fault a mother for caring about her child's future. The back and forth felt endless, a verbal tug of war where no one was winning. Just when I thought I couldn't take any more, Alex's sister Lily made her entrance. Her eyes were curious but held an edge of judgment that matched her mother's. So, you're the famous girlfriend. Heard a lot about you, not all good. I might add, Lily said, her voice dripping with disdain. I was about to snap back when Alex stood up. That's enough, both of you. We came here in good faith to share a part of our lives with you. If that's not something you can respect, then maybe we should leave. The rest of the visit was awkward, to say the least. Conversations felt forced, every laugh a little too loud. But Alex held my hand under the table, a silent promise that we were in this together. As we left, I couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and frustration. I'm sorry about that, Alex said once we were in the car. They can be a bit intense. I sighed, watching the lights of the house fade in the rearview mirror. It's not your fault, but man, your mom and sister, there's something else. Alex chuckled, a sad sort of sound. Yeah, they are. But hey, we survived, right? Survived and stronger, he said, agreeing. The wedding planning sailed smoothly enough, but the big day itself, that's when the storm hit. Lily, the sister-in-law-to-be, got soused beyond belief and decided it was showtime. In the middle of our reception, she staggered up, glass in hand, and slurred out accusations loud enough for the back row to hear. This one's a gold digger, doesn't know the first thing about our kind of life, illiterate, trying to snag my brother's cash. After that, there were other antics, molesting guests and other things that are not customary to talk about in decent society. I felt my face flush hot with anger and humiliation. Without a second thought, I pulled out my phone and called the cops. This drama needed an audience, and I wasn't about to let Lily's performance go unchecked. The aftermath was a hurricane of accusations and threats. Gloria avowed revenge for the disgrace I'd brought upon their family. You've made a mockery of us. The press will have a field day with my daughter's antics, thanks to you. Gloria seethed. Alex was torn, trying to play peacemaker in a war that had no room for neutrality. I saw the strain in his eyes, the way his shoulders sagged under the weight of his family's drama, and his desire to keep us afloat. But I stood my ground, my resolve hardening. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about drawing a line, about not letting wealth or the lack thereof dictate how I was treated. As the dust settled and the night grew quiet, Alex and I sat amidst the wreckage of what was supposed to be our happiest day. I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice heavy with unshed tears. I never wanted any of this. I took his hand, feeling the rough edges of our new reality. We'll get through this, but things need to change, starting with setting boundaries with your family. The vow we made that night wasn't just about staying together. It was about fighting for the respect we deserved, about not letting old money or old grudges define our future. 2 years slipped by since we said I do, and those vows felt heavier every day. Gloria practically vanished from our lives, and honestly, I didn't miss her one bit. But it wasn't just her absence that marked those years. It was Alex's changing attitude that really drove the wedge between us. He'd come home late if at all, muttering excuses about work that didn't quite add up. The warmth we once shared cooled into courtesy, and then even that faded. The tipping point came one night when he threw his jacket on the chair like it had personally offended him and said something I never thought I'd hear. You know, I could have done better. Married someone with a bit more class, more in line with my circle. His words stung like a slap. I stood there gobsmacked, wanting to scream, to tell him about the fortune that was mine. But Grandma's voice echoed in my head, advising patience to see Alex for who he truly was. So I swallowed the truth and the hurt, biting back tears. I thought maybe, just maybe, if we had a child, it might bridge the gap between us, remind him of the love that brought us together. Alex, don't you think it's time we thought about having a baby? It could bring us closer, I ventured one evening, hoping to spark something of the man I fell in love with. His reaction was like a cold shower. A baby now? Don't be ridiculous. We're not ready for that, not by a long shot. That conversation shut me down. It wasn't just the refusal. It was the disdain, the way he made it clear that what I wanted, what I thought could save us, was nothing but a foolish fantasy. Days turned into weeks, and those weeks into months of silence, of living side by side, but not together. Each rude remark, every late night, added another brick to the wall between us. I confided in Grandma, pouring my heart out over cups of tea that had gone cold before I could finish them. He's not the man I marry, Grandma. I don't know if he ever was, I admitted. She listened, her eyes sad but understanding. You can't make someone be who you want them to be, darling. Sometimes we see what we want to see until we can't ignore the truth any longer, she said. Her words, though heavy, carried a sliver of relief. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't asking for too much. I just wanted a partner, someone who saw me as an equal, who respected me. But as the days passed, it became clearer that wasn't who Alex was, not anymore if he ever had been. The idea of leaving crossed my mind more times than I cared to admit, but every time it did, I pushed it away, hoping against hope that something would change, that the man I loved would find his way back to me. The vibe was set for a killer party. I'd gone all out for Alex's birthday bash, hoping to bring back a spark into what had turned into a pretty mundane marriage. No expense was spared, and the guest list was a who's who of our closest pals. Notably missing from the invite list were Gloria and Lily, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Their drama was the last thing I needed ruining the night. Alex was in high spirits, soaking in the adoration and well wishes from everyone. For a moment, it felt like we were back in the honeymoon phase, all laughter and inside jokes. But that bubble burst the second Gloria and Lily crashed the party, uninvited but clearly expecting to be welcomed. Turns out Alex had gone behind my back and invited them, hoping to avoid any family fallout. Their presence turned the atmosphere tense. Lily, in true form, made a beeline for the booze, dressed in an outfit that screamed, "Look at me," and not in a good way. Gloria's snide remarks flew under the radar, each one a veiled jab at me or our marriage. As the night wore on, Lily's antics escalated, fueled by champagne and the need to be the center of attention. She started a rant about me not fitting into their family, how I was unworthy of their name. It was a mess, and Alex was nowhere to be found, too busy playing the good son to notice the circus unfolding. The climax of the evening was when Lily, a few sheets to the wind, decided to air out some dirty laundry, waving around some documents as she slurred out insults, each word a knife. The spectacle ended with her stumbling into the pool, documents flying everywhere. I rushed over, more out of curiosity than concern, and gathered the scattered papers. My heart sank as I pieced together what they were: divorce papers signed by Alex. It was like a punch to the gut, each signature a betrayal. I stood there numb as the reality of the situation washed over me. My husband, the man I had vowed to spend my life with, had decided our journey was over without so much as a word to me. The party around me faded into a blur as I clutched the documents, Alex's signature glaring up at me, confirming what I didn't want to believe. This wasn't just a party to remember. It was the end of everything I thought we had. In the aftermath of the pool incident, I sought clarity amidst the chaos. My heart pounded as I approached Alex, holding the soaked documents that had unwittingly unveiled a truth I was unprepared for. "Alex, what's this about?" I demanded, my voice stronger than I felt, thrusting the divorce papers toward him. Before he could respond, his mother interjected with a smugness that made my skin crawl. "Oh dear, looks like your little scheme didn't work out, did it? Alex is leaving you. Thought you could trap him with a baby for his money." I stared at Alex, searching his eyes for any sign of the man I married. But he couldn't meet my gaze. His silence was more telling than any words. With resignation, I signed the divorce papers. They were just a formality now, a closing chapter of a book I no longer wished to be part of. As the dust settled, Grandma approached, her presence a calming force. She didn't need to say anything. Her eyes conveyed volumes of empathy, understanding, and unspoken support that bolstered my resolve. It was then she decided to reveal the truth, not just to me, but to everyone present. "She doesn't need any of your money," Grandma declared, her voice steady and strong. "In a month, she turns 25 and will inherit a fortune far beyond what you could imagine. She's been raised to value people over wealth, to seek out genuine connections rather than financial gain." The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Gloria's face morphed from smugness to shock, then to a desperate kind of greed as she quickly began backpedaling, her apologies as transparent as they were insincere. Alex, too, seemed suddenly eager to rewrite the narrative, insisting his intentions were never to hurt me, that he was merely influenced by his mother. But it was too late. The veil had been lifted, revealing the stark reality of our relationship and the motivations behind it. I met their apologies with a quiet smile, not out of forgiveness, but out of an inner peace that came from understanding my worth independent of the wealth that awaited me. "You've shown me your true colors," I said, my voice imbued with a newfound strength. "As for surprises, well, I've prepared another one for you." At that moment, a loud honk echoed through the tension outside. A sleek luxury car rolled up to the gate, the one I had secretly bought for Alex as a surprise. The irony wasn't lost on me. I couldn't help a bitter laugh as I excused myself, stepping outside to confront the final act of this drama. There it was, the epitome of luxury on four wheels, a symbol of the love I thought we shared, now just another piece in the game of pretense and betrayal. Without a second thought, I slid into the driver's seat, the leather cool and unyielding beneath me. Much like my resolve, Grandma, ever my rock, joined me, her presence a silent testament to the strength and dignity that ran in our blood. Turning to face the house, I saw Alex and his mother at the door, their expressions a mix of confusion and awe. "Everything from now on goes through my lawyer," I called out to them, my voice clear and devoid of warmth as I drove away. "And don't worry about my stuff. I'll have a courier pick it up." Their faces, once smug and self-assured, now painted a picture of realization and loss, not just of the wealth they coveted. I turned the key, the car's engine purring to life, a sweet sound that promised freedom and new beginnings. Grandma and I shared a look, a silent agreement that this was the first step toward a future unburdened by deceit and manipulation. After the revelations and dramatic exits, the air seemed clearer, as if the truth had not only unveiled the greed and deceit, but also cleansed the path ahead. It wasn't long before the first test of my newfound resolve came knocking, or rather calling. The phone rang, its shrill tone slicing through the calm like a knife. On the other end was none other than Lily, her voice dripping with an unfamiliar sweetness. "Hey, I just wanted to, clear the air between us. We're practically the same age, right? We could be friends." I couldn't help but let out a short, disbelieving laugh. The contrast between this sugary tone and her usual disdain was stark. "Friends." I echoed the word, feeling it foreign. "You mean like how friends don't badmouth each other at parties or try to humiliate them in front of everyone?" There was a pause, a moment where I imagined I could hear the cogs turning in her head as she searched for a response. "Well, water under the bridge and all that," she attempted feebly. "Water into the pool, you mean?" I shot back, unable to resist the jab. The silence that followed was telling. It was clear that my refusal to play along had derailed her plans. "Fine, be that way," she snapped, her veneer of niceness crumbling away. "You'll regret this." I hung up, feeling a mix of amusement and sadness. It was a stark reminder of the facades people wear and the lengths they'll go to when faced with the consequences of their actions. The temptation to retaliate was there, a nagging thought in the back of my mind. I posted a video on social media of her falling into the pool. It went viral like wildfire. Within an hour, 1,000 people had liked it. My sister-in-law was internet famous. She tried to call me, demanding I take it down, but I just blocked her. I was done with her fake sweetness and her nasty attitude. A week after that, my phone rang with a number I knew all too well. It was Gloria, her voice unnaturally sweet, offering an olive branch she hoped I'd grasp. "Let's put the past behind us for Alex's sake. Can't we reconcile?" she suggested, as if the wounds were mere scratches that could heal with a band-aid of words. "No, Gloria, that ship has sailed," I replied, firm but not unkind. There was no anchor in my voice, just a resolute peace. "I wish Alex well, but our paths are diverging." Not long after, Alex made his own attempts at a reunion. One morning, I found a bouquet of flowers at my doorstep, the card bearing a simple "I'm sorry, please come back" message. The sight of them sparked more anger than affection. Without a second thought, I tossed them into the trash. His efforts didn't stop there. He tried to visit, showing up unannounced with the hope of talking things through. But I wasn't the same person he left behind. His presence, once a source of comfort, now felt like an intrusion. One evening, as he made yet another uninvited appearance, I met him at the door with a resolve as hard as steel. "If you don't stop this, I'm going to the police," I warned, my voice steady and firm. "Your apologies can't undo what's been done. It's over, Alex, really over." The gravity of my words finally seemed to reach him. His shoulders slumped, and with a final lingering look, he turned and walked away. That was the last I saw of him. In the time that followed, I threw myself into charity work. It became my passion, my purpose. Helping those truly in need, connecting with people who valued kindness over wealth, brought me a joy I hadn't known was missing. Living with Grandma, I found peace in our quiet routine. We'd sit and plan our next project, our next way to make a difference. It was during these moments I realized this was where I was meant to be. I had no illusions about the road ahead. It would be fraught with challenges, perhaps even heartache. But I also knew it would be filled with joy, with moments of unbridled happiness, and the kind of love that enriches the soul. And so, I live my life looking forward, not back. I work, I help, and I hope. I believe in a future where all find true love, not defined by wealth or status, but by genuine connection. And yes, one day, I'll have those 3 beautiful children I dream of. But for now, I'm content. I'm building a life of purpose, surrounded by love that doesn't ask for anything in return. This isn't just the end of a chapter. It's the beginning of a whole new book, and I'm the one writing it.